Hey, welcome to today's video. It's WikiDeek. Today we're talking about recreating the retooling of the rebuild. Yes, the Los Angeles Kings. I find it funny they still won't say the rebuild word, the R word. But today we're going to talk about the F word. Yes, frustration. I think a lot of people, when you go on LA Kings Insider or some of the other boards, they seem to have a pretty reasonable understanding of what's going on with the Kings and what the realistic expectations are. But there are some people who are really getting fired up and really unhappy. So I thought maybe talking about what the Kings are doing and how to deal with frustration might be advisable. Now, to me, there are two types of frustrations. Frustration, not frustrations. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a crustacean. The first type is, why haven't the Kings signed somebody? Why haven't the Kings traded for somebody? Why can't the Kings score and win more games this year? And the second one is, I've had a crappy week and I'm yelling because Forbert just, turned over the puck horribly, or Hutton pinched at the wrong time again for the 900th time this season. So the second type of frustration, I've had a bad day, right there with you. I have an incredibly stressful job. I like yelling at the TV as well. Beats yelling at other people or the dog. So knock yourself out. I have no cautionary words for you at all. In fact, it's probably healthy for you. The first one, though, about why aren't the Kings winning more games? McClellan sucks. These guys need to bear down or something of that sort. You might want to step back and realize what's going on with the Kings. Although they won't say the R word, this is a full-blown rebuild. And what you need to do in a full-blown rebuild, easy for me to say, is you need to suck. And that's what the Kings are doing. And they told us this at the beginning of the year. If you translated the corporate speak, we want to reestablish our culture. We want to get professional again. Teammates relying on teammates. Everybody playing hard. At no point did they say anything about winning, because this is a team that's not designed to win, and it's the right thing to do. We need to lose for a couple of years, and why? Because we want to accumulate draft picks, and we want to get high draft picks, and we want to draft as many kids as we can because we want this tsunami of talent coming up. But it's going to be 3 years, 2, 3, maybe 4 years for this to play out. And in the meantime, we're going to suck. And again, it's what we should do. With a salary cap, like you see in the NHL, you either need to be credibly competing for a cup or you need to be cashing it in and rebuilding. Because if you don't, you end up in this kind of middle space. Many of you know I'm a Flyers fan. The Flyers did it wrong. Flyers did it wrong for 30 years or so. That's what they would do. They would go out and hire the latest, 30-year-old veteran. Ooh, and then he would be decent for a couple of years, and then he would be a waste, and he would be, just eating the salary cap. And they went nowhere. Yeah, they would make the first round of the playoffs every couple of years. If everything went well, maybe they would bop into the second round. But generally speaking, they were never a credible cup contender. Not since Richards and Carter left. And it was, kind of a disaster. And then Ron Hextall went in there and basically, sold the owner on the concept of, it's been 40 years since your last cup. Are you tired of, sitting here and just kind of pedaling in place, or do you want to do it right? And the owner said yes. And so we saw the Flyers be torn apart, guys traded away, and assets built up, and, all these kids. Now, Hextall did that in Philadelphia, where patience is not exactly a well-understood word. I mean, literally 2 months into the rebuild, they were already ready to burn him at the cross. It was insane. And of course, the owner passed away, and that kind of screwed things, and Hextall got fired in a coup d'etat. But he did it the right way. And if you go look at the Flyers now, they are a team that is on the come. They've got a bunch of young kids, bunch of talented young kids. They finally got the right coach. They finally found potentially a goalie. We probably won't know for another year. But they're a team you look at, and if you're a Flyers fan, and you'd be shocked at what you see on the Flyers boards, people are optimistic. I know. In Philadelphia, can you even imagine? But that's basically what needs to happen with the Kings. The Kings need to suck for a couple of years. So we're not going out and trading for veterans. We're not going out and signing a free agent. And we're not going to win a lot of games in the next couple of years. This year's not great. Next year's not going to be good either. We don't have anybody coming next year that's going to make a difference. And it's just, it's just going to take time. We have 2 levels of prospects. We have a bunch of kinda prospects, but nobody elite. And then we have a younger group who hopefully are more elite, who are going to come in and are going to make dramatic impacts. Guys like the Velardis, the Turcots, the Fajimos, the Kalievs, these kinds of players. Blake Lizotte, great story. Blake Lizotte is never going to be a regular on a cup contending team. Maybe a fourth liner. Who knows? Luff, these guys, no, it's just not going to happen. If you don't believe that, compare this roster to the St. Louis Blues, or let's say the Las Vegas Knights. How many Kings, current starters, would start on those teams? Kopitar, obviously, Doughty, Kopitar. You can make an argument over this player or that. Very few. We just don't have talent. That's why we don't score. That's why we lose all these 1-goal games. And I think lately, if you listen to the Ewok King, Tom McClellan, chatting, and particularly after last night's game, he's tried to play the good soldier. He's not being mean, but eventually he just has started to state the fact, which is, there's no talent on this team, or very little of it. And you see that, with his comments about the other teams, takes them, in maybe a couple chances to score a goal, whereas with the Kings, it's going to take 5 or 6. Or last night when somebody asked him the question about how the veterans are performing, and he got 100. Kopi's back to what he was, supposed to be. Of course, we're on that Kopi cycle. It's a good year. But the other veterans, he wasn't mentioning anybody by name, but some of them need to decide if they want to still be in the league. We don't know how much some of these guys have left. That's pretty pointed and it's pretty much true. And yes, trade deadline's coming, and I hope we trade them all. But again, who's going to take them? I can see Martinez being taken. I can see Forward being traded, actually, and Toffoli. But who's going to take Jeff Carter? Nobody. I mean, Dustin Brown, I know he's holier than thou, but if we're a cold-hearted team that's really rebuilding, we should try to trade him. Nobody's going to take him, not with that contract. So we're just going to have to play this out. And so if you're getting frustrated over, why the Kings aren't trying to improve the roster to, win now, the answer is they don't really want to. They want to lose. They want to get higher draft picks. So that in a couple of years, all that talent's coming up and suddenly you're in a much better position. You look at Toronto, the Maple Leafs. I mean, when Babcock was hired, he kept saying, look, there's going to be pain. There needs to be pain. And obviously, they ended up drafting some elite players. Now, they, in my opinion, completely screwed it up. Dubas, I don't think, has a clue what he's doing. And you look at their salary cap, and it's just, a nightmarish mess. But they did it the right way. They brought in a bunch of talent. And obviously, that's what we're going to try and do. You look at the Ducks. Ducks trying to do the same thing. But I think one of the things that happened with the Ducks last night is kind of illustrative as well that we need to keep in mind, which is when these kids the higher talented guys do eventually get up here, just because they make the team doesn't mean they're immediately going to be, incredibly productive. Pettersson in Vancouver is the exception to the rule. That's not usually the way it works. Usually it takes a couple of years for these guys to get used to playing in the NHL and actually becoming, dominant players. Sam Steele is a prospect with the Ducks that, get a lot of people think highly of. He has like 4 goals this year. But if you looked at Steele playing in the beginning of the year, he looked awful. He was nondescript. You could rarely notice him out there. You watched him in last night's game. He had a real presence. I don't know if he had a point or not, but he was noticeable and he was driving play and, really being a force out on the ice. But it's taken a year. And, he played last year as well, and he was kind of nothing last year. You can see an example on the Flyers. Sean Coutier, he's a center. Flyers are very high on him. He came up, and he was awful the first 2 years. He did nothing on offense. Now, he was good defensively, so they ended up, holding him as a third-line defenseman or a third-line center because he just couldn't produce offensively. He did nothing offensively. But he was good defensively, so they had him as third line defender, and they stick him on Crosby, and make Crosby aggravated all game, and he was good for that. And then he signed a contract extension based on that. Then the next year, out of the blue, he scores 30 goals. Looks like a completely different player on offense. And he's said, I just got comfortable. I finally felt like I belonged, and what have you. So when these kids all come up, it's not like they all show up in 2022 and woohoo. We're lifting the cup. it's going to take a year or two for them to get used to playing and, you know, the nuances of it all. So this is going to take a while. But again, it's worth it. We just have to wait because hopefully, you know, right around 2023, you know, 4 or 5 years down the road, whatever it is, all this talent starts hitting and suddenly we're ready to go and actually compete for a cup. And then that's when you go out and either make a trade for Carter, you know, or Richards, or you know, go out and sign somebody to come in, you know, to fill in that last couple pieces. And then that's when we can really get angry when we don't win. So anyways, let the hate flow. That's fine. But just keep in mind, at no point is this team going to be competitive, certainly this year and probably next year. And for the second half of this season, prepare for a lot of losses because we don't have much goal scoring. If Toffoli gets traded, you know, there goes a second line wing or first line, you know, however you want to classify him, which removes one more goal scorer. So it becomes even more a situation of, you know, copy or die. But who knows? Maybe they'll bring up Ferk and he'll score 30 and knock us out of the top 10 of the draft and screw everything up. So anyways, frustration. Take a deep breath. Dig up.